Hey everyone, welcome to Princess Gay. I'm your host Connie, and today we are here with my blind reaction to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. So this is not a donation reward. I'm going to start that right off the bat because I didn't want to wait for this to be a donation reward. I don't know if and when someone would end up choosing it, but I just wanted to get to this. I I wouldn't say like out of hype necessarily, and I'll get to that in a bit here. But I just wanted to get to this anyway, and I didn't really want to wait that long. It just recently came out to streaming, and again, I didn't know how long it would be before someone did end up requesting it for various reasons. So I just decided, you know what? Instead of waiting, instead of seeing when it would happen, instead of like giving it time, I'm just going to do this now. And we'll just take it from there. So when I say I'm not like super hyped about this or anything, um, you may be wondering, like, okay, then why are you still choosing to get to this? Why are you still putting so much focus on this, on getting to this now instead of later? Well, I grew up with the TMNT. I grew up with Ninja Turtles. I had the toys growing up. I had VHS tapes and stuff. I would watch them all the time. And eventually I kind of grew out of it a little bit. I guess that's the wrong way to put it, but it's more like I just kind of like started focusing on other things, and my attention towards TMNT waned a bit. Especially once like some of the new stuff came out, it's like some of it just didn't hit in the same way for me, and so I was not an active fan. You could say I'm more of a casual TMNT fan. And I was not watching when some of the more recent iterations came up, like the 2012 series, which I believe has Mae Whitman in it as April, which is pretty interesting. But I never watched that. I never, or originally I hadn't watched Rise of the TMNT. I only checked it out on this channel as a reward request. So, yeah. And it's just, with that, I just wasn't getting into it, but I don't know, maybe down the line I'll give it another chance or something. But, point of everything is that while I was never a big fan or anything, I still enjoyed it. And so when this movie was announced and started showing like screenshots and trailers and everything and started announcing the cast, I'm looking at this like this could be very, very bad, but it could also be pretty good. And it's very hard to say from all the trailers and stuff on which side it's going to be. And the cast, I am so fucking mixed on. There are some really good cast members who I think will do a great job. There are some who I really am worried about. And then there are some who I think could do a great job, but I also just, at this moment in time, don't like the people. Like Jackie Chan. Great actor, great doing voices and stuff. Don't like him right now, because of apparently a lot of issues with his queer daughter and his mistreatment of her and everything. And the fact that they're, you know, not talking to each other because of it. Which, it's always terrible to hear about, like, an actor you grew up loving ending up being that way. But anyway, not going to focus on that. But that's just an example. But there's ones that I'm just like really not sold on. Like I know Seth Rogen is helping make this, but I really wish he wasn't voicing in it too. Like I don't even remember who he's voicing. Let me see if I can find this out real quick. I have a thing up for it. Okay, he's Bebop, while John Cena is Rocksteady. You know, for those two characters, maybe it'll work, but it's like the thing is, Bebop's voice is just going to be Seth Rogen because he said, like, when it came to the Mario movie, that he doesn't do voices; that it's just going to be his voice. So it's like, I'm going to end up hearing his laugh again and getting really annoyed by that because it's going to take me out of the immersion for sure. But then one thing of note is that you have all of the turtles being portrayed by actual teenagers this time and having more of a modern teenage feel to them rather than being kind of like these cool characters with a little bit of a teenage edge to them and everything. And I'm definitely interested to see how these characters do. I do know, like, one thing about them. I know Donatello is apparently an anime fan in this, and that there's multiple references to actual anime in here because of that. So I'm interested to see how that's slipped in to see before I can really judge it. Based on the trailers and everything that I've seen, it looks like it could very well be really good in some cases. But again, it's hard to judge ahead of time because trailers can be misleading. I didn't see all the trailers, but I think the ones I didn't even have like Baxter Stockman in it. I believe he's voiced by oh God, what is his name? Giancarlo Esposito. Gus from Breaking Bad, Lex Luthor from the Harley Quinn series, and he's, I guess, in Mandalorian as well. Various other things too. But yeah, he's I believe Baxter Stockman in this, and it's like he's probably going to do an amazing job because he's an amazing actor. He does great with voice work too, as we have seen with his role as Lex Luthor on Harley Quinn. So I genuinely am excited to hear his performance. But it's like, I don't know. The art and animation style for this, though, I will say looks good. It's like it's another one of these movies that are taking a lot of inspiration from Spider-Verse because that's kind of the big thing right now. Anytime a big animated movie comes out that kind of changes the game, it's like everyone tries to copy it. This happened when CG first became a thing. It happens when any kind of big stylistic thing goes down, and that's what's happening here. Spider-Verse started this big stylistic change that everyone's been copying. Puss in Boots copied it, and now this is copying it. And honestly, if it can do it well, I have no issue with that because that feels normal. It feels normal that these kinds of things would be copied like this. That animation styles and all would be emulated in order to, not only make money, but get people interested, especially when they're really unique, interesting styles, like we see with the Spider-Verse style that is currently going. And hopefully this ends up really working for this film, too. Again, I've only seen like one trailer, I believe, and a teaser as well, maybe. But it's like, it looks like, again, it could be good, but it could be a little forced. I'm just going to have to wait to see it within the context of the film. Other than that, like, I don't know what the actual plot of the film is. I assume that it's early in the careers of the turtles. But other than that, it's like, I don't know what the actual story is about. I don't believe the Foot Clan are in this at all. I will say that. I don't believe they're in this at all. At least not from what I've heard. They, they're not from what I've heard. I was messing up big time there. um, but I'm definitely still interested to see what more they can pull out of this kind of franchise. I know there's like a video game based on The Last Ronin, I think it was, that is coming out next year, I want to say. And people are really excited for that because that's a very, very dark and mature take on the Turtles. And so it's like, it's also one of their biggest, like, comics, one of their biggest stories. So that's pretty interesting. Um, yeah, I'm just curious as to how this is gonna go. The reason I'm wanting to get to it like without waiting and everything is simply I just want to get it. I just want to see it. I want to see it. I want to get it done. I want to get it taken care of. I want to check this out because a lot of people seem to really like this, and I would rather just get to it sooner rather than later. You know what I mean? So, that being said, let's get into it and hope for the best. When the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades black, then fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the movie. So, that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. So I'm going to say this right off the bat. This movie was good. Not great. I think a lot of people are very much over-exaggerating the quality of this film. But it is good. I enjoyed it. There may have been some points during the reaction you might have seen me like doing this or like stuff like that where it's like I've mentioned before, it's like if I'm doing that it's usually either because I'm bored or just have nothing to react to or say at the moment. And there were a lot of points during the reaction where I was also pretty quiet, especially early on. And I'll say that this movie has a lot of good in it, but also has some stuff that keeps it from being truly great, keeps it from really hitting that sweet spot that I was hoping for. And a lot of that comes from the early portions of the film. Pretty much the entire second half really is great. It's the best parts of this film for sure. But let's talk about this. You might have noticed, like, I looked like I was writing some stuff down. I actually was. During the reaction, because there's some things I wanted to make sure I remembered to get to. The first thing I want to talk about, one of the things that I feel dragged it down a little bit, was the constant pop culture references. Here's the thing. In a movie, whether animated or not, I can dig a good pop culture reference here and there. In fact, I think it actually helps make it feel modern and believable and something you can connect with. But you have to do it right. If you're just constantly throwing in pop culture references every few sentences practically, it starts to feel like it's too much. It starts to feel like you're just throwing them in just to throw them in. Like you don't have any actual reasons for having them in there other than just being pop culture references. It's like you're wanting the audience to like watch this movie and say like, oh, I know what that means, or I know what that means every few seconds, instead of integrating them in properly. There's some stuff in here that works. Such as Donnie figuring out that a way to help stop Superfly, or whatever he called himself at the end, was by utilizing the same method as Attack on Titan, going for the back of the neck and everything. I thought that was actually really clever. But there's a lot of references in here that are just thrown in Like, just constantly. It's like you don't even have a minute to breathe before another reference comes in. And sometimes they make references multiple times in a row, and it's like, we get it. Like, they made the Godzilla reference with Super Superfly, like, 3 times in the span of like 5 minutes. And it's like, you don't need to do that. You just need to do it once. We get the joke. Reference Godzilla. Just do it once. You don't need to do it 3 separate times. That's unnecessary. Um, there's also, in kind of that same vein, some jokes that just didn't work. There's a recurring joke of the entire milking thing, and while that does come into fruition, it does actually happen. It's like they kind of ran that joke to death. Like, if it was only mentioned once or twice prior to it happening, I think it would have worked a lot better. But they kept bringing it up over and over, like, probably like, what, 5 or 6 times, and it started to feel like, just do something else. And even when it did come to fruition, even when it did happen, it's like, still like, I wish you had only done this 1 or 2 times max. It just feels like you just kind of ran this joke into the ground. And again, a lot of the jokes, a lot of the references are like that, I feel. It's just too much. It felt like it felt very try hard rather than natural. Like there's some references that are also just purely visual. Those were great. Like on Donnie's bow staff, he has stickers for different anime. Like, one of them is like Gojo from Jujutsu Kaisen. And it's like, I love that kind of a reference. It's there, it's very visible. Or the fact that he's wearing a JoJo's Bizarre Adventure hoodie. It's like, those are good references. Because they're not being bashed over your head. But when they're constantly saying all these references and things to pop culture, different shows, anime, celebrities, and it's a too much. It's too much. The soundtrack. Let's talk about that next. The soundtrack I actually thought was mostly really good. It definitely went for a different vibe than I feel like a lot of TMNT properties usually go for, with having more of that hip hop, R&B, rap style to its soundtrack, with a couple of exceptions, such as What's Going On. Normally by the Four Non-Blondes, but they decided to use the meme version of it. Like, you even heard, like, even though I think they're talking at the moment, but you even heard the part where it makes the Skeletor noise, like, in the song, and it's like, oh my god, you actually use this version of the song instead of like the regular Four Non-Blondes version. It's like, again, obviously a reference, but it's like that one was better handled than a lot of them, I feel. Another issue I had was that the early parts of this just kind of like throw things together. A lot of it felt a little disjointed. It didn't feel like a full story was connecting until like probably midway through. Even though there were obvious points of that connection beforehand, it just felt like it was kind of just like trying to introduce us to the characters by giving us almost like a series of vignettes of them. I don't know how else to explain it. It just felt disconnected and very spotty in how it was handled. I feel like if they had given this movie like maybe 10 more minutes, they could have fleshed out that opening third or so a lot better and made it feel more natural. But because of the time that they put this movie on, I don't know if they were planning with that amount of time or what the specific circumstances behind that were. But I feel like they just needed more time to flesh out, again, that like first third or so. The next issue I want to cover is Splinter. This was a thing that I had an issue with in Rise of the TMNT as well. I don't like Splinter being this goofy. Splinter to me is supposed to be a wise old mentor who trains up his young sons, watches over them, teaches them about the human world and why they should be cautious about it. But he's not supposed to be goofy. I mean, like, he can have a little fun here and there, but Rise of the TMNT and this made him a little too silly for my tastes. It felt weird, to say the least. And part of that is kind of specifically shown in this movie with the reasonings for why he does everything with his sons. He hates humanity because he's seen the worst of it, right? Fair enough, whatever. I can live with that. But the reason why he trains his sons in ninjutsu and martial arts and everything, I hate. Because normally it's supposed to be for, self-defense and so that they have, what's the word? I wrote it down. Discipline. It's supposed to discipline them, to give them a, control over their abilities and make sure that they know when to use them, how to use them, and all of that. In here, he basically just says, oh, I'm giving you the power to kill. And it's like, that is not Splinter. That is a terrible mindset for Splinter. And I get the entire idea is that Splinter in this movie is supposed to be overprotective and, again, just judging all of humanity based on the worst of them. He's supposed to be a mirror of Superfly. And I get that. And I get that by the end he changes his mind. He realizes he was wrong, that he was going overboard, and he makes up for that. But I don't like that. I don't like that as an idea of him having taught them specifically for that reason. And on top of it, in this version, he starts off as a rat, which different versions of TMNT have done it different ways. Some versions he starts as human, some he starts as a rat. I don't mind that, but it's just, he doesn't feel like the wise old mentor that Splinter's basically supposed to be. Again, it's like modern iterations have made him more goofy and silly. And it's like, again, I'm fine with him being fun-loving. I'm fine with him having a softer side to him. But it's like, there's a point where it's just too silly. And I feel like he was one of the weaker points of this movie because of that. I really don't like how he did that. And the last big issue I had, the last notable issue, I guess you could say, is that while all the mutants and April looked fantastic in terms of their designs, like they were designed extremely well, every other human character outside of April was so butt-fucking ugly in their designs and just so deformed looking. It was really distracting. Like, Baxter Stockman, I understand, is usually portrayed really, like, kind of creepy looking and all. But in this, like, one, he wasn't even a bad guy in this version. He was kind of a normal, lonely dude you're supposed to actually kind of like a bit. And he looks like a goblin or something. The way his body is, like, kind of squished and, like not tormented. Why was I going to say tormented? Squished and, like, compressed together and stuff. It's like it's so squished down and so unnatural looking. The one woman, the enemy woman, I can't remember her name right now. Her face, what the fuck was the shape of her face and her neck? And it's just like the proportions looked fucking weird. And even just random human characters you saw, in the background, or the ones who were like, either helping at the end, or the ones who were showing the worst of humanity in the beginning and stuff. It's like they just looked so deformed. They looked more mutant like than some of the mutants, honestly, which is just a confusing choice. I understand this movie was trying to go for a stylistic approach, that it was trying to have a certain style to it, a certain identity in its designs, and that's fine. But it's like, why is April the only human character who looks like a normal human? Why do all the other human characters have to look like deformed and stuff? I'm not even saying they're bad characters or anything. It's just the way they're designed is really off-putting. And it didn't work. It didn't work at all. But again, all the mutant characters looked great. Like, I loved how Superfly looked, Mondo Gecko, the turtles themselves, Splinter. It's like, I love how the mutants looked. It's literally just when you come down to the human characters, as minor as they were in this. I couldn't get past that. That's more of a nitpicky issue, honestly, compared to some of the other ones I had. But it is still an issue. It is still something that distracted me while watching. I just feel like they had no reason to do that. And why specifically is April like the only human character who looks like a normal person? Her proportions are great. Her design looks fantastic. It's like, why? I don't understand. It's just a weird decision. But let's talk about the cast real quick. The cast was mostly good. I'm not a huge fan, and this is going to be like one of the things, like, I feel that is going to be very split with a lot of people. I'm not a huge fan of making the turtles seem as young as they did in this. Like, here's the thing. I understand that this, in some ways, like, you could say is more realistic because, actual teenagers voicing them and everything. But when I think of the Ninja Turtles, that's not how I think about them. And their personalities are also a bit deflated, for lack of a better word, in this movie. Like, Raph is barely the cool but rude guy. Donatello has absolutely nothing to do with the intelligence that he normally would have. Like, Donatello's supposed to be the intelligent one who, like, works with tech and stuff. It's like, that's not in here at all. He's just a nerd. They just decided to we're going to take this intelligent, smart, technologically sound character and just make him a nerd. Because that's equatable. Mikey is not any funnier than any of the others. He's supposed to be the funny one. He's supposed to be the goofy, silly one. But he's not funnier, goofier, or sillier than any of the others. The only thing that you could even, like, connect to that is the improv thing, which is literally brought out of nowhere. At one point, it's like, oh, suddenly he's just into improv. And that comes back at the very end, but that's literally the only points in the movie where you would ever get that. Because that's just not part of the movie otherwise. Or his character. And Leo, again, there's only one single part in the film where he ever comes across as the brave, like, leader type character that Leo typically is. The moralistic, ethical leader type character. The only time that really comes into play is near the end. And it's even called out. It's like, oh, you're actually starting to sound like a leader, and then he ruins it, and he just, like, I guess he's not again. And it's just, when I think of the Ninja Turtles, I think of like the old 80s cartoon or even the early 2000s stuff. It's like that's what I think of with the Ninja Turtles. It's like, yeah, they sound older, they act older. Some people like to say they sound and act like adults, but I've never gotten that vibe. They always felt like teenagers to me in those versions. Um, but just older teenagers rather than like younger ones, which these ones kind of gave more the vibe of. Um, but yeah, it's like the voice acting was good though. I'll give it that. Going back to what I was trying to talk about originally before I got into that entire spiel, the voice acting was good. I thought the VAs did a good job. Um, Seth Rogen's voice actor was the only one that felt off. Even John Cena, I will actually give, as much as I'm not a John Cena fan, I will actually give him, he worked for Rocksteady. Seth Rogen did not work as Bebop. Seth Rogen was in here because he helped write and make the movie and everything. We know that's the only reason he's part of the cast. Because he literally helped make the movie. It's literally his baby. Um, it was just Seth Rogen's voice. It's the same issue I had with Donkey Kong in the Super Mario Bros. Movie. It's just Seth Rogen's voice, and it does not work for the character. Though it works a little better here than it did with Donkey Kong. And again, at least he didn't do the laugh. I'm sorry, but the laugh is so annoying, and it's immersion breaking. So it's like I'm just glad that wasn't brought into things here. Um, the let's talk about the art and animation. So from the trailer and everything I saw, it's like it looks good and all, but now I've seen it like within the context of the film and how it goes. Outside of just the human character designs, because I already talked about that. Um, the art and animation is being given extremely heavy praise, like one of the biggest things being praised for this movie. I thought it was okay. It's not on the level of like the Puss in Boots movie or Spider-Verse or anything else doing that kind of style currently. It's just not. It's a little janky at times, a little weird at times. Most of the time it works fine, but nothing about it really stands out as being that great. Nothing about it really like works on a spectacular level, like Spider-Verse and Puss in Boots did. Um, but outside of that, let's talk about just the movie itself. Like I said, the first part of the movie had some issues with it, in my opinion. A lot of it just felt like pieced together rather than as a coherent full story. It felt like it was just like, let's just make a bunch of references, let's just make a bunch of jokes, introduce these characters in that way, rather than anything else. And once it really got into the plot with Superfly and everything, and once a lot of the action started, it picked up massively. It started to get a lot better. It started to have stakes. It started to have a lot more intrigue to it. The action was really cool. Honestly, some of the action scenes were probably the best parts of the movie. Um, there were some points where it was a little much. Like again, the milking scene was like, why are you doing this? But it's like a lot of it worked really well and really helped pick this movie back up for me. I also like how a lot of the mutants, pretty much all of them except no, actually literally all of them except Superfly, were not really bad guys. They wanted acceptance like the turtles did. they were basically analogs for the Turtles in the same way that Superfly was an analog for Splinter. Um, and that's why they were so easy to redeem, because they didn't want to actually go along with this plan in the first place. And you could tell that. That didn't come out of nowhere. You could very much see that they were never fully invested in it. And you could see that they made quick friends with the Turtles and everything when they were introduced. They were like really into that. So that their redemption actually worked really well. Superfly not being redeemed also worked well, because he was the one who was clearly the most hateful towards the humans. He was the one who was in the first place kind of like controlling all the other mutants and telling them to be hateful towards the humans. It was all because of him. So him choosing not to be redeemed and in the end being defeated and everything worked. It led to some great scenes, some great shots, and I like that he wasn't like all powerful at first. After he becomes the kaiju, you could basically say he's a lot more hard to take down. But when he was in his normal Superfly form, like, yeah, he was strong, but not unbeatable by any means. All the other mutants teaming up against him, it's like, yeah, it worked just because of the numbers. And I'm glad that it did. I'm glad that they didn't make him just able to take on all the other mutants at once. I feel that would have been a little too unbelievable. So I'm glad that he was able to be taken out like that. But I want to talk about the true MVP of this movie, April. When this movie was being advertised and when April's design first came out, a lot of people were fucking racist, sexist assholes towards her. Sizist as well. Calling her ugly because she's not the super conventionally attractive April O'Neil from like the 80s cartoon and stuff. And you had the racists who were calling her out for being turned for her being turned into a black woman in this and everything. Even though that's not even new with April O'Neil at this point, like she was black in Rise of the TMNT as well. But yeah, there were a lot of people being racist, being sexist, being sizist, and just being overall terrible people. And I when I first saw the design, I'm like, where is anyone seeing any issue with this design? She looks like a normal teenage girl. Which it's like, she is. It's like, what were you expecting? She's a... the wildest part was the people who were saying she's not hot enough. It's like, this is a teenager. Are you saying that you want this teenager to be sexy and everything and sexualized? It's like, that's pretty fucking gross, my dudes. That's pretty fucked up to say. But it's like, her design is great. Again, like the only human design in this that is. But in terms of her character, she was the best character in this by far. She was the most likable, the most enjoyable to watch. I liked her arc of everything she did to help them and how far she was willing to go. I like her trying to get over her stage fright, you could call it, and everything. The puking bit was a bit much, specifically when she apparently pukes on camera, like at the school and everything, doing the announcements. It's like, okay, have her puke, that's fine, I get it, that could make sense. Puking out of nervousness and everything, that's very, yeah, that's fine. But the way they did it, like the cartoonish amount, and the way it was like just projectile vomiting out of her while she was like turning her head, and it's like just shooting out in these waves and stuff. It's like, you didn't need to do that, and that's You really just, why did you do that? It's like that's not even like gross in a funny way. It's just gross. It's just unenjoyable to watch. It's like, why would you do that? Why? It's the equivalent of a fart joke. It's just gross without any redeeming quality to it. But that was honestly the worst part of anything involving her, because even when she puked on the news broadcast at the end, it was more a realistic depiction of that, even if it was still radioactive green for some reason. But that was still like a better depiction of her puking on camera and stuff, and I thought it was much better handled at the end there. But the way, like, she literally saved the day by getting on camera and doing that broadcast. She literally turned New York around to the Turtles and the other mutants helping defeat Superfly, and is the reason they won. They would not have won if not for April. She is literally the MVP of this movie. And I just kind of want to rub that in the faces of everyone who was being bigoted and terrible to her just based on her design and everything, which again doesn't even look bad in the first place. It's just people being assholes. She was great, like absolutely. Definitely the best part of this for sure. Now, this movie also actively baited a sequel involving Shredder and the Foot Clan. And I think if we do get a second movie, which again, based on how popular this was, is more than likely. It's also, they also have to bring in Casey Jones. They have to. Like, you've got a lot of setup here. You're bringing the Foot Clan. You got to bring in Casey Jones at this point too. Hell, you could even have him start off as a bad guy, like I think he does in a lot of the interpretations. Maybe working with the Foot and everything, or at least another person working with this other group, but eventually joining the Turtles and them as part of the group, as part of the heroes. Maybe because of how, formidable Shredder would be. So, yeah, bringing Casey Jones, I think, would be a really strong idea. And I would love to see where they could go with that. If they're going to continue to go with some notable name actors, or at least for like the main squad, maybe some lesser known ones, but still having some degree of note. I'm terrible at wording this. Let's just put it this way. I think a good voice for Casey Jones would be oh god, what is his name? Oh, it is completely escaping me. Shit, hold on. I could look this up real quick. Oh, just remembered. Jack Quaid. Right as I'm about to look it up, I just remembered it. I think Jack Quaid would be a great choice. We know he can do voice acting. He was phenomenal in My Adventures with Superman. And he's just a great actor in general. Like, he's amazing on The Boys, for example. He also had a small role in The Hunger Games, funny enough. But, yeah, Jack Quaid, I think, could be a great choice to voice Casey Jones. As for the Shredder, that's a tougher one. Because it's like, what kind of Shredder do you want? Because there's some Shredders that just kind of sounds like a normal guy. Intimidating, but still a normal guy. And there's some where they go with this deep, raspy, like, over-the-top voice. For a movie like this, I could see them going either way. I think a good voice actor could be Ken Watanabe. I could see him voicing the Shredder really well. Um, Other than that, I'm not thinking of any other names off the top of my head. Um, yeah, off the top of my head, maybe Kevin Michael Richardson, but seeing how this movie went, I doubt they're gonna get like voice actors, like notable, just people who are known for voice acting. So I doubt they'd get like Kevin Michael Richardson. Maybe someone like J.K. Simmons could work. That'd be a different take on Shredder for sure, but I could see him playing that kind of a role. I don't know. It depends on what they want to go for, just completely at this point. Um, we'll see. We'll see. Because, like I said, it's almost guaranteed that there's going to be a second one at this point with how popular this one was. So we'll see in the future what the plans end up being. Um, but I mean, that obviously kind of requires us to get past these strikes first, and you know, give the writers and the actors fair pay because that's kind of really fucking important. But I would love to hear your thoughts. So tell me in the comments below, what did you think of TMNT Mutant Mayhem? Uh, what are your thoughts on the different aspects of it, on the actors, on the animation style? Let me know your thoughts on all of that and more in the comments below. And for now, I'm Connie and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.